Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel on leading the way. And thanks to the National Immigration Forum for several days worth of incredible events. Today, we're pleased to have with us Dan Boone, the president of Trevecca Nazarene University since, 2005, Dan, is that right?
Correct.
Perfect. And Michael Crow, longtime colleague, president of Arizona State University. And Michael, I think you describe Arizona State as the new American university. And I think it's appropriately so, and a good kicking off point for us for our discussion today. So as I think you all know, American colleges and universities have long been at the forefront of immigration issues, whether those are issues of undocumented students, DACA students and dreamers, or whether at the other end of the academic pipeline with graduate students who leave American colleges and universities with newly minted PhDs and aim to enter the entrepreneurship economy and need to be able to immigrate successfully in order to do that. So through the range of issues, American colleges and universities have tried to lead, and there are no two better people to help us in our discussion today than Dan and Michael. Dan, you've got a relatively small place compared to ASU. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that's an advantage for you as you're working with undocumented students?
Yeah, Trevecca is a university of around 4,000 students and around 1,800 or so traditional undergrad. The key piece of that for us is that a significant number of those students coming out of Nashville have been DACA students and immigrant students. They comprise 10-15% of our student population and have given to us the opportunity to hear stories we wouldn't normally hear. For me, this has never been a political issue. My background is that I grew up in southern Mississippi during the days of Martin Luther King and the marches. Actually jumped on a bicycle and rode over the bridge to watch Dr. King march. And I lived watching in my state what happened in the decades following when we denied African Americans access to higher education, the phenomenal price, the sad price that we paid. And for me, this is one of those kind of moral issues. These are our next door neighbors. These are students who are going to school with our sons and daughters who were born here in the United States. And many DACA students have been also, but these are our neighbors. And so for me, the issue is an issue of morality in terms of the kind of future that we might build for our nation, as well as our cities, and for these families that we care about.
That's great. Thanks, Dan. Michael, Arizona has been much in the news over the last week and a half, in part because of the demographic shifts in the state that have made what Dan just said ever truer there. When we talk about these stories, we're talking about our neighbors, we're talking about our kids' classmates. Arizona State has been at the forefront of diversity and access for as long as you've been there. Tell us a little bit about how it feels in a large state institution as you navigate these issues and as your students do.
Well, one of the things I've felt in the 18 years that I've been here as privileged to be the president of the university here has been the scale with which our democracy is able to be represented by all of the things that we do. I remember when I first got here, I was listening to a student who I happened to be nearby explain his reaction, which was tears and falling to the floor when he was told that he was going to be deported back to, in this particular case, to Taiwan, because he was an undocumented student whose parents had died, and there was some circumstance. I mean, he was going to be booted back. He didn't speak Chinese, and he was mortified, and he was being kicked out. And then to learn as we move forward with lots and lots of our DACA students and our Dreamer students coming from Mexico, but we've had DACA students and Dreamer students from over 20 countries. I remember hearing the story of a kid who made it here all the way to ASU, who's started out their journey swimming the Yalu River from North Korea into China. getting Chinese passports or something, somehow getting onto some boat, coming to the coast of California, jumping into the Pacific Ocean, lost their mother, her mother at that time, ends up at ASU as a student, somehow brought to the United States by parents fleeing North Korea. I'm like, hallelujah, you know, you're our student and we're going to move you forward. So like Dan, I've always viewed this as moral duty. That it's moral duty for us to find a way to advance children who find their way into this democracy to full achievement, and that's been something that we've tried to do all along. In fact, in the Arizona Constitution, it's very, very clear. It says every child will have access to a free education through high school, and every child will have access to an almost free university. Says every person, and Arizona was one of these places where we were once a part of Mexico, no longer a part of Mexico. The Sonoran Desert, this beautiful, unbelievable ecosystem that much of Arizona has in it, is also in Sonora, Mexico. And so for us, what we've tried to do is to figure out how to be the warm and welcoming democracy that's built on immigration, and in particular, it doesn't mean we don't need immigration policies or immigration laws or immigration procedures. We do, but in this case, relative to these students, we're talking about people that are our children. We're talking about people whose lives have to move forward, and we're talking about people who need to be treated justly, and that's what we have decided to do.
Michael, if I could note too from what you said, I think most of the awakening that has happened in our colleges to the issues of DACA students and our immigrants has come from the stories that we're able to hear. At times, why the rest of the population doesn't wrap their arms around this issue in the way that we have. And one of the reasons I think is that being in a university, you're in a context of storytelling and you get that broad diversity of people. So I feel privileged that a university has given me the opportunity to hear stories. My concern for this issue began with the story of a mother whose son was an honor roll student. And I asked her where he was going to college. She began to weep, and she just simply said he won't be able to. State of Tennessee, for instance, is one where a DACA student or an immigrant has to pay out-of-state tuition to attend a school that might be right there in the state where they are. So we've had a significant challenge in terms of funding that. But I think for a lot of people, it begins with knowing someone and hearing a story. And my strong conviction is the human heart is stirred when we hear the stories of these students. And then as we get to know them, it even grows.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Dan, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that as we think, and as the forum engages in a couple of days worth of dialogue, we think about the particular role of colleges and universities. I think that you're both suggesting, and I think it's right, that colleges and universities are one of the few places where we continue to provide opportunities for people to hear and tell stories that they wouldn't normally hear or be able to tell in the too siloed world in which we live, whether those are in our neighborhoods, in not intentionally, but resegregated public schools across America. Colleges and universities remain one of the places where diversity of opinion, diversity of background and experience come to the fore. For too many people, these remain abstractions. And I guess I wanted to ask both of you about that. We're looking at the beginning of a new administration in Washington. We'll have divided government. The Senate looks like it will be managed by the Republican Party. The Democrats will be in charge in the House. President-elect Biden and his team will come in January. What advice do you have for the incoming team? How can they help support not just the DACA students, but the campuses that support DACA students?
Well, I guess I'll jump in by saying, the advice I have for the new administration is, we need for everybody to understand what our assignment is. Our assignment is to take and move people forward in terms of education and workforce preparation and so forth and so on. And we can't be, we're not immigration officials. Here's a child who's graduated from a local high school, who's ready to move forward, a veteran, who's come back from service, who has immigration status X or Y. Our job is to advance the society through teaching, learning, and discovery, and we need to be enabled and empowered to do that. And we need clear definition. We need policies that are just and equitable. And then we also need, in the bigger picture, immigration reform, so that we can get those people who are very upset about the way that they feel that the immigration system is being abused. We need to get them to understand that we've improved it and it's working in a way that's very, very effective. And I think there's all kinds of ways to solve these issues. We just have to make decisions. And we've been unable to make those decisions to fix this area of public policy.
Ted, I appreciate that question. The American University has been over the years a political football in itself.
Mm-hmm.
We've had people on both sides of the aisle that have tried to co-opt the mission of a university for political purposes. At the heart of what we're trying to do is raise up a responsible citizenship in America through the process of education. And so on our campuses, we have been trying to help students ask hard questions and find their way to answers that will cause human beings to thrive. Well, in that process, there is blame to be for both political parties. So what I would say to a new administration coming in is please do not ask us to continue to deal with this as a political issue. Help us to be able to deal with this as a human issue. Just like Michael said, a student who's graduated from high school, and the American dream is that they might move on to higher education or to particular skill training in a technical college. To create a pathway for them to do that is of economic interest to the United States in itself. We believe it is good economic policy to give the best job skills to every person who's going to be working in the United States. So I agree. One, if we could get immigration law so that those who are here as immigrants, we could give them a firm place to stand. They could know whether they are on a path to citizenship or not. They could know if they have permission to enter the tax-paying American society, under what terms and what penalties are, what expectations are around that. To remove that cloud from over the head of immigrants and their families. A lot of our documents and immigrant students are as much concerned about their mother and father as they are themselves. And they're a very young generation bearing a heavy load of concern for parents. And when I was in college, it was my mom and dad who were worried about me, not me worried about my mom and dad. So if we can get to policies that would be simple, straightforward, and enable us to help people find a place to stay, that would be a great help. In addition to that, we have to find some path for help their education. I'm here representing Shirley Hoogstra, the president of the Council for Christian Colleges and Universities. She wasn't able to be with us today. And I know on her behalf, many of our private colleges are struggling, doing their very best. We have to find inordinate amount of funding to help make up the gap for a student that has no state aid, no federal aid, many of them no capacity for loan to be able to complete college. We're doing our share with the number that we can, but I hope the federal government and a new administration will ask the question, how do we help these students also?
I think it's a great point. And I think that on the financing side, we've been doing some work at ACE to estimate the costs, two kinds of costs. One, the costs that institutions are bearing just to make education available during COVID. And then second, what's going to be the impact of this downturn of the economy on family incomes. And we know that that will have a disproportionate impact on low income, first generation, and undocumented families. And so in order to even keep the momentum going where we are, we will need significant resources. I couldn't agree more.
With Nashville, we've tracked the hot spots for COVID in the city. The section of our city in which most of our immigrants live, highly Hispanic, but several other immigrant groups also. That group has remained bright red almost through the entire pandemic at this point. These are the people whose jobs are face to face with other human beings. They're actually bearing some of the higher risk in the economic sector to keep the wheels of an economy and the wheels of a city going. And we're watching those families pay a significant price in terms of the disease itself, economically. Then you turn around, and those are the very families that have least access to health provision to be able to care for them when they are ill. I'm deeply concerned about these neighbors that we have.
Yeah, Michael, that profile fits Arizona as well, doesn't it?
Well, in terms of the impact of COVID, I mean, it is disproportionately affecting elderly, particularly elderly in lower income situations, and then also frontline workers, which are in many service industries, minority individuals who are taking on many of those jobs. And so, yes, that is an impact of COVID.
Let me take us to the micro for a couple of minutes. Dan, you mentioned the burden that many DACA students are bearing, having to do with their responsibilities for their families and worrying about their families and worrying whether their status or their exposure is going to expose their families to punitive action from immigration officials. How are institutions, not just your own, but those you admire, how are they helping those students bear that burden? And how much more is it now that students aren't able to be on campus as regularly to receive the kinds of supports that the community has to offer?
I think you're reading it well. The large majority of our DACA students, for instance, are commuter students. They do not have full access to the health provisions that we actually have on the campus. With a large physician assistant program, we've been able to provide quite significant medical care for our students of testing and all of that. And many of our DACA students, because they are commuting students, don't have the capacity to be there for that. I'll just tell you one brief story. We were so concerned for many of our DACA students with the downturn because back in the spring, the early word that we heard was job loss, job layoff, and we began to watch what was happening. We work with Equal Chance Opportunity, a wonderful Tennessee organization to DACA students. And so we partnered with them through our own denomination that supports us, the Church of the Nazarene. And with Nazarene Compassionate Ministries, we were able to provide a significant fund. We were as engaged in helping rent and utility and food continue to flow as we were in trying to keep a student enrolled and moving forward. Really, this pandemic, for the first time in my presidency, has placed a significant number of our students and their families at the point of what I would call a shortage of the basic necessities for life. So we've had to go find other partners as well as using our own resources for that. And I'm grateful we've been able to find those kind of partners. I don't know what the university that is significantly larger than would have done with a challenge the size of what we've had with that percentage of our population. We've been trying to help probably 200 students during this particular time, which is a small number compared to what many large universities have.
It's great, and the kinds of community partnerships that you've developed have really been critical. And again, I think it's a place where the forum has been important in connecting, whether it's law enforcement or the business community, higher education. I think that happens at the national level through the forum. It happens at the local level through institutional partnerships. Hey, Michael, you're at the other end of that. 200 sounds like your office hours. And you mentioned at the outset of the Arizona Constitution and its very clear statement that the responsibility of the state university is to educate every student. Mm-hmm. And I know that you were at the forefront of arguing with the federal government that every student means every student when it comes time to move resources out of in this case the CARES Act into the necessities that Dan was talking about. How has a big place like ASU gone about helping students and their families get the resources that they need?
So we have 75,000 students here with us physically. We have many other students, online students, who are distributed across the entire country. For our students that are here, we're really focused on treating them all the same. They all have access to unlimited testing for COVID. They all have access to healthcare and health support. They all have access to food mediation and technology mediation. We've done this through CARES Act funding, through philanthropy. We were able to provide thousands of laptops and hotspots to students that didn't have the technologies that they needed to go into the synchronous mode of learning through what we call ASU Sync. We've had unbelievable generosity by our staff, by our faculty, by our community, helping everybody to step up and make these things work. We don't treat DACA students. If you're a student at ASU, you're a student at ASU. It doesn't make any difference. We've also then expanded our testing capabilities. We didn't have a high-speed test, so we invented one. We didn't have a saliva-based test, so we invented one. And we got it deployed, and we've tested now 300,000 tests. We also have deployed our testing into the community and into communities that are economically challenged. And so we're out in the neighborhoods working with students and their families and others, all free, all supported by some combination of philanthropy, the state of Arizona, CARES Act funding, other things that are going on. And so that doesn't mean that everything's hunky-dory. Far from it. It's a very complicated moment. What I will say, though, is that we've also found ways to improve the delivery of our healthcare and mental health care services through HIPAA-approved telehealth systems that we put in place. We've improved ways to communicate and to link to families and to work with people. And so we're also finding ways that will probably, when this is all said and done, will be a better institution on every level. We also run a series of public charter schools with 3,400 students. And so all of those students then are subject to the same opportunities in all the neighborhoods that they're in, mostly Title I, mostly minority communities that we're working in. And so I think we do have the advantage of lots of resources from our scientists and our technologists and things like that. And then just unbelievably generous and thoughtful government leaders and philanthropically oriented institutions. For instance, just on the testing alone, those machines cost us millions of dollars to build, millions. And we got huge philanthropy, millions of dollars to be able to make these things happen. So,
Dan, I just heard an offer for testing for you guys. So after we get off, you and Michael can figure out how to get that saliva test going.
Well, gratefully, the independent colleges here of Tennessee have bonded together, and we've employed a lead epidemiologist who has also guided us. The state of Tennessee is helping us with free testing for those who need it. So we've been able to provide free testing. And then we have several other partnerships for that. It's helped us to have the strong physician assistant program. We have a nursing program, but in addition to that, our counseling programs go all the way master's and PhD level. So we've been able to bring a lot of our own graduates into the work of mental health care for our quarantine, for their families, for our employees, and for all of those.
Dan, at the beginning, you talked about the fact that higher education has been a bit of a political football over the last several years, and one of the things that we worry a lot about at ACE is the consequence of that for students who may wonder about their future and higher education and whether college is right for them, whether they will be welcomed, whether it will lead in the long run to the kind of success that they need or not. And I'm wondering if we could spend our last couple of minutes sort of looking into that crystal ball into the future. What do you think we in higher education need to be doing to send the clear message to DACA students, to documented first generation students as well, that our institutions are there for them and that we stand ready to serve and we are more committed than ever before? How do we, first, do you think that's the right message? How do we get that message out? I'll let each of you take a shot at it.
Yeah, I think they already believe that at our two institutions because they're there. Right. There's a sense in which they're starting at a place where they have been welcomed and treated like any other student. We have about 18% of our traditional students are Hispanic students. And the truth is, I can't walk and tell you who's a DACA student, who's a Hispanic student, who's a Coptic Christian. They blend and they mix in a way in our community. And I think that is one of the critical pieces of the future, is that we are not labels on particular groups of students such that they are differently. The next level, I think, is that we need to tell them that they're in a place only is willing to hear their story, but wants to hear their story, so that we're able to bring them into the center of the difficult conversations regarding immigration law, federal funding for DACA students, all of the kind of issues that are there, that they can be a participant in those discussions in significant ways. I'll admit to you, we got blindsided by the 2016 presidential election, and I didn't see the rancor and division coming to our campus at that point, and it caught us a little flat-footed. We were ready this time, and we've been able to walk through this fall a very respectful conversation about political division and differences, and we've been able to do it in a way that I believe has deepened and grown our college community. One of my goals is to graduate the kind of classes that as they go into the world, they will be people of careful thought, of deep human respect. My prayer is that they would be shaped and formed by our deeply held theological conviction that all humans are created in the image and likeness of God and worthy of infinite and ultimate respect. So for me, it is that they would go through college and spend a 4-year chapter of their life in a culture like that, as a part of building a new culture here in America that is more like that. We also have to help them. I'm watching one of our DACA grads is a Yale law student, and another is in a wonderful social justice environment program in one of the Ivy League colleges. I'm watching these students and I'm following them. A lot of their dreams have actually been shaped by the culture that they came up through. And now what they've needed us presidents and their faculty and department chairs to champion them into master's and doctoral programs so that they can move on and become societal leaders for us on the very issues that they experienced in their own gut. I know, having gone through racism in Southern Mississippi, I know what that has done to my life as an experience that I had. And I think these students in our colleges right now are our future leaders for many of these kind of issues. and we have to steward their life and their future exceptionally well by championing them in the next chapters.
I think that's right. They want better, and they're looking for tools to be able to take their own aspirations for themselves and for all of us, and put them into action. Michael?
I think what I would add, I would agree with what Dan said, but I would add what we say to our hundreds of DACA students and to our more than 30,000 first generation undergraduates who are here with us physically, not including our online students. What we say to them, and what we say to the others out there who say, well, why are you bothering with these DACA students, or why are you trying to get so many kids to go to college? And we try to get them to understand that the U.S. economy hasn't been at the level of competitiveness that it should be and has been in the past, and that the opportunities are virtually unlimited. And so as you move beyond the soulfulness of building the human and the human spirit and, the enablement of all human potential, well, you want people so empowered to be able to move into an economy that they're helping to evolve. And so as the economy becomes more global and more technologically driven and more knowledge economy driven and more creativity driven, all these things, then what we're doing is we're empowering these students and their families to help shape the outcome of our socioeconomic structure. And so what I try to say to people is that the economy is only going to work if we can find talent everywhere, empower that talent and that energy and that creativity from all the families and move it forward. If we don't do that, then we're going to be left with an underperforming economy, high social welfare costs, high expenditures for non-productive outcomes. We're going to be left with an under-realized potential. We're going to be left ultimately with social instability, if not social unrest. All those things are going to be derivative. Or we could take all this talent and all these kids who come from families where no one's ever been to college before, and these DACA kids who meet all the qualifications and are ready to move forward, and help all of them to move their lives forward. And then it's a net benefit. The benefit is far greater than just to the individual. The benefit is to the totality of our society. And most people, I think the vast majority of people, get that and understand that, including here in Arizona, and understand that this is a worthy undertaking. And a lot of the people that are against all that, they just aren't caught up yet on the way the world and its economy actually works.
Michael, I love how you said that. And I would add to it, if we fail to do this, we will actually raise up by our own choices an embittered generation.
Yes, totally.
Who will live in the context of seeing the educational privileges that the same people they went to school with, grade school with, had, and they never had. And we will create our own societal problems for the future because we fail to be able to provide opportunity, as you're talking about, economically, socially, in every way, for these students who are right there at the point of college right now.
And none of that has to be the case. All of the positive outcomes are achievable. All of them.
This is not that hard.
Yes, exactly.
And it's not that hard, but it takes work. And I think that's where we need to turn the agenda over to those who can help us craft sound, strong, clear immigration policies that take away the uncertainty, the doubt, and the fear, and allow these opportunities that we've been talking about to flourish within our own heartfelt sense of responsibility to these students and to their families. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, Michael. A pleasure as always to be with you. Thanks for your participation today, and thanks for letting me be a part of the conversation.
Nice to see you, Ted. Nice to see you, Dan.